How did a family dinner in an expensive restaurant turn into the moment my wife's sister lost her voice in front of everyone? They thought they were assigning me a role I deserved. What they didn't know was that the place where they humiliated me was already mine. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I remember the exact moment it happened. We were standing at the entrance of the Meridian, one of the finest restaurants in the city. The valet station was busy, cars pulling up one after another, well-dressed people stepping out into the golden light spilling from the entrance. Brenda and Victor arrived in their black Mercedes, engine rumbling as Victor pulled up too close to the curb. He always drove like he owned the road. Brenda stepped out first, tall and commanding in her designer dress, her heels clicking on the pavement. She looked around, spotted me standing with Elaine near the door, and her face lit up with that particular smile she reserved for moments when she was about to say something she thought was clever. "Rowan," she called out, loud enough that several people turned to look. Perfect timing. I should have known right then, but I just nodded, keeping my face neutral. She walked toward me, fishing in her purse, and then held out her car keys. They dangled from her manicured fingers, the Mercedes emblem catching the light. "Be a dear and park the car for us, would you?" She said it with that bright, cheerful tone that made it sound like a request but was really a command. "You're so good at these little things." Victor laughed from behind her, still standing by the open driver's door. "Come on, man, help us out. You know how tight parking is around here." Several people were watching now, a couple waiting for their car, the valet attendants, other diners walking past. Elaine's face went pale, but she didn't say anything. She never did. I looked at the keys, then at Brenda. She was still smiling, but her eyes had that edge they always got when she was testing me, seeing how far she could push, how much I would take before I said something. I took the keys. "Sure," I said quietly. Brenda's smile widened. "Thank you, Rowan. You're always so helpful." Victor clapped me on the shoulder as he walked past. "That's the spirit. Family helps family, right?" They walked into the restaurant together, Brenda already talking loudly about the wine list, Victor's laughter booming. Elaine followed them without looking at me. I stood there holding the keys, feeling the weight of them in my palm. A young couple walked past me toward the entrance. The woman glanced at me, then away quickly, embarrassed, like she had just witnessed something uncomfortable and didn't want to acknowledge it. I walked to the Mercedes. It was still running, the engine purring softly. I got in, adjusted the seat, and pulled away from the curb. But I didn't drive to the parking garage. Instead, I pulled up to the valet station and rolled down the window. Julian was working tonight. He was young, early 30s, with an easy smile and the kind of professionalism that made him good at his job. He recognized the car immediately. "Evening, Mr. Carrig," he said, leaning down to the window. Then he saw me in the driver's seat and his expression shifted slightly. Confused? I handed him the keys. "Can you do me a favor?" "Of course. What do you need?" "Park this car as far away as possible. Not the garage. Find somewhere off-site. A public lot. Somewhere it will take a long time to retrieve." Julian blinked. "I'm sorry?" "You heard me. Make it inconvenient." He looked at the car, then back at me. I could see him processing it, trying to understand. "Mr. Carrig, this is—" "Do it," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Please." He hesitated for another moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, if that's what you want." "It is." I got out of the car and walked into the restaurant. The hostess greeted me by name, led me through the main dining hall toward the private section where Brenda and Victor were already seated. The room was full tonight, every table occupied, conversations humming in the warm light. Brenda saw me approaching and raised her glass. "There he is, all taken care of?" "All taken care of," I said, sitting down next to Elaine. "Good," Brenda said, turning back to Victor. "Now we can actually enjoy ourselves." Elaine reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. It was brief, almost apologetic. But she didn't say anything. She never did. I sat there quietly, listening to Brenda and Victor talk about their latest vacation, their new investments, their opinions on everything and everyone. They filled the space with noise, with presence, with the absolute certainty that they mattered more than anyone else in the room. And I let them believe it. The dinner stretched on. Course after course arrived, each one presented with elaborate descriptions from the waiters. Brenda and Victor dominated the conversation, talking over each other, laughing too loudly, making sure everyone at nearby tables could hear them. "We're thinking about buying a place in Aspen," Brenda announced, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Victor's company is doing so well, we really need a winter retreat." Victor nodded, swirling his wine. It's important to have options. You can't just stay in one place all year. That's not how successful people live. Elaine smiled politely, asking the right questions, playing her role. I stayed quiet, cutting my food into precise pieces, chewing slowly, observing. At one point, Brenda turned to me. "You're awfully quiet tonight, Rowan. Everything all right?" "Everything's fine." "You sure? You seem distant?" "Just enjoying the meal." She laughed. "Well, that's about all you can do, right? Enjoy the finer things when someone else is paying." Victor snorted into his wine glass. Elaine looked down at her plate. I took another bite of my food and said nothing. After dessert, when the check came, Victor made a big show of pulling out his credit card. "This one's on me," he said grandly. "Consider it my treat." Brenda beamed at him. "You're so generous, honey." The waiter took the card and disappeared. Victor leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head, looking satisfied. This is the life, isn't it? Good food, good company, good wine. What more could you ask for? "Nothing at all," Brenda agreed. She looked at me. "You should really try to get out more, Rowan. Experience places like this. It's good for the soul." "I'll keep that in mind," I said. The waiter returned with the receipt. Victor signed it with a flourish, adding what I'm sure he thought was a generous tip. Then we all stood up, gathering our things, preparing to leave. That's when Brenda remembered. "Oh," she said, stopping in the middle of the dining room. "Rowan, where did you park the car?" Everyone around us could hear her. Several heads turned. "It's been taken care of," I said. "Yes, but where is it? We need to get it." "The valet will explain." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean, the valet will explain?" "Just ask at the stand. They'll tell you where it is." Victor stepped forward. "Come on, man. Just tell us where you parked it. We're tired. We want to go home." "Ask the valet," I repeated. Brenda's face was starting to flush. "Rowan, this isn't funny. Just tell us where the car is." "I told you. Ask the valet." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the anger building behind her eyes. But we were in public, surrounded by people, and she couldn't make a scene. Not here, not in front of everyone. "Fine," she said through clenched teeth. "We'll ask the valet." I watched them walk toward the exit, Brenda's heels clicking sharply on the floor, Victor muttering something under his breath. Elaine lingered for a moment, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What did you do?" she asked quietly. "Nothing they didn't deserve." "Rowan." "Go with them, Elaine. Make sure they get home safe." She hesitated, then followed her sister out of the restaurant. I stood there alone in the dining room, surrounded by the quiet murmur of other diners, the soft clink of silverware on plates, the gentle background music, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. It didn't start this way. When Elaine and I first got married, her family treated me differently. Not warmly exactly, but with a kind of polite distance that felt respectful. I was the man she chose. That counted for something. I remember our wedding reception. Brenda made a toast, talked about how happy she was for her little sister, how she hoped Elaine and I would build a beautiful life together. She even made a joke about how quiet I was, but it was gentle, affectionate. "He's the strong, silent type," she said, and everyone laughed. Back then, Elaine and I would spend evenings in our apartment kitchen, cooking together, talking about our days. She worked in marketing. I had just started building my investment portfolio. We were partners, equals. But somewhere along the way, the balance shifted. I think it started when Brenda got promoted. She became regional manager at her firm, and suddenly she was making 6 figures, traveling for work, networking with executives. She started dressing differently, talking differently. She became louder, more certain, and Victor fed into it. He was always status conscious, always comparing himself to other men, measuring success in visible things, cars, watches, vacation destinations. When Brenda's career took off, Victor started treating me like I was falling behind. "How's business, Rowan?" he would ask at family dinners, leaning back in his chair with that smirk. "Still doing the investment thing?" "Still doing it," I would say. "Must be tough in this market. But hey, at least you've got time flexibility, right? That's the important thing." Time flexibility. Like I was unemployed. Elaine never corrected him. She would just change the subject, steer the conversation somewhere safer. I told myself she was trying to keep the peace, that she didn't want to cause tension with her sister. But the comments kept coming. Brenda started calling me for favors. Small things at first. "Rowan, can you help us move some furniture this weekend? Victor's back is acting up." Or, "Rowan, we need someone to pick up our dry cleaning. You're nearby, right?" I said yes every time, because that's what you do for family. Then the favors got bigger. Rowan, can you watch the house while we're in Europe? Just make sure everything's okay, water the plants, that sort of thing. Or, Rowan, we need someone to drive Aunt Helen to her appointments next month. You've got the time. I said yes every time, and with every yes, I became smaller in their eyes. At holiday dinners, Brenda started seating me at the far end of the table. We need the big talkers up here, she would say, laughing, pointing to the seats near her and Victor. Elaine would sit with them, and I would sit with the cousins and the elderly relatives who didn't hear well anymore. In the family group chat, my role became clear. They would post messages about events, plans, logistics, and then someone would add, Rowan, can you handle this? Or Rowan will take care of it. I was the assistant, the helper, the reliable background presence who made things run smoothly so the important people could focus on important things. Elaine saw it happening. I know she did, but she never said anything. When I brought it up once, late at night in our kitchen, she just sighed. They don't mean anything by it, Rowan. That's just how Brenda is. She's intense. She's disrespectful. She's my sister. That was the end of the conversation. I learned to stop bringing it up. I learned to stay quiet, to let the comments roll off me, to accept the roles they assigned. Because fighting it meant conflict, and conflict meant tension, and tension meant Elaine would be caught in the middle, so I stayed quiet. And they mistook my silence for weakness. There were moments, though, when the mask slipped, when I saw clearly what was happening. Like the time Brenda called me at 2 a.m. because she and Victor had locked themselves out of their house after a party. They were tipsy, laughing, treating it like a grand adventure. Rowan, we need you to come let us in, Brenda said, her words slightly slurred. We can't find the spare key. Where's the spare key supposed to be? Under the planter by the back door, but it's not there. Did you check? Yes, we checked everywhere. Just come over. You're good at finding things. I drove across town at 2:30 in the morning. When I got there, they were sitting on the front steps, sharing a bottle of wine they'd apparently brought home from the party. Victor waved when he saw me. There he is, our hero. I found the spare key in less than a minute. It was exactly where it was supposed to be, under the planter. They just hadn't looked carefully enough. Brenda hugged me, reeking of wine and perfume. Thank you, Rowan. You're a lifesaver. What would we do without you? I drove home and didn't sleep the rest of the night. Another time, at Elaine's mother's birthday party, Brenda announced to the whole table that I had agreed to help her redesign her home office. I hadn't agreed to anything. She had mentioned it in passing, and I had said, maybe. But to Brenda, maybe meant yes. Rowan's so handy, she told everyone. He's going to help me pick out furniture, arrange everything. I'm useless at that kind of thing. Elaine smiled. That's nice of you, honey. I didn't correct her. I just nodded and drank my wine. The office project took 3 weekends. Brenda changed her mind constantly, sending me back to stores to exchange items, asking me to rearrange furniture multiple times, never quite satisfied. Victor watched football in the other room while I worked. When it was finally done, Brenda posted photos on social media. So happy with my new office. Thanks to my amazing designer. She tagged a professional interior designer who had nothing to do with the project. I saw the post and closed the app. These moments accumulated like sediment, layer after layer, building up slowly, pressing down. And through it all, Elaine maintained her careful neutrality. She never took sides, never confronted her sister, never stood up for me in any meaningful way. I told myself it was fine, that it didn't matter, that I was strong enough to handle it. But every person has a breaking point. Mine came with the car keys. The morning after the dinner at the Meridian, I woke up early. Elaine was still asleep, her breathing soft and steady beside me. I got dressed quietly and left the apartment before she woke up. I drove to a cafe across town, a small place I liked because no one knew me there. I ordered coffee and sat by the window, watching people walk past on the sidewalk. Morning light filtered through the trees, casting moving shadows across the pavement. A woman held the door open for me on my way in. After you, she said, smiling. The barista called me sir and thanked me for my order. An older man at the next table nodded at me when our eyes met. Just a simple acknowledgement, one person to another. It was such a small thing, but it struck me how different it felt from the way Brenda and Victor treated me. Strangers treated me with more respect than my own family. I sipped my coffee and thought about the dinner, about Brenda's smile when she handed me the keys, about Victor's laughter, about the way the people around us had looked at me with pity or embarrassment. I thought about Elaine and how she had looked away. For a long time, I had told myself that keeping the peace was worth it, that maintaining family harmony was more important than standing up for myself, that Elaine needed me to be patient, to be understanding, to let things go. But sitting there in that cafe, watching strangers treat me like a person, I realized something. I wasn't keeping the peace. I was enabling disrespect. And the longer I stayed silent, the worse it would get. My phone buzzed. Multiple messages in the family group chat. I opened it reluctantly. Brenda had posted a long rant about the valet service at the Meridian. Absolutely unacceptable. They parked our car in some random lot blocks away. Had to wait an hour for them to retrieve it. Never going back there again? Victor had added, totally unprofessional. Someone's going to hear about this. Other family members chimed in with sympathy. That's terrible. You should leave a bad review. What kind of restaurant does that? I read through the messages without responding. They had no idea what had actually happened. They thought it was the restaurant's fault. They thought they were victims of poor service. The irony was almost beautiful. I finished my coffee and drove home. Elaine was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her own cup. She looked up when I walked in. Where did you go? Just out for a drive. She nodded, looking down at her cup. About last night? It's fine, I said. It's not fine, Rowan. I saw what Brenda did, with the keys. And you didn't say anything. She flinched. I didn't know what to say. She was already making a scene. I didn't want to make it worse. It's always worse, Elaine, every time, and you never say anything. She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry, I don't know how to handle her. I know. We sat in silence for a while. Then Elaine reached across the table and took my hand. What do you want me to do? I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted from her anymore. I didn't know if words would change anything, but I knew what I needed to do. I need you to understand something, I said finally. I'm not going to be treated like that anymore. Not by Brenda, not by Victor, not by anyone. Elaine squeezed my hand. Okay. I mean it, Elaine. Things are going to change. I understand. But I could see in her eyes that she didn't really understand. She thought this was just me being upset, venting frustration. She thought things would go back to normal in a few days. She was wrong. Later that afternoon, I went to my home office and opened the filing cabinet. I pulled out a folder labeled Meridian Holdings and set it on the desk. Inside were partnership agreements, ownership documents, operational contracts. Everything that proved what I actually was. Not a passive husband, not a helpful assistant, an owner. I had been a silent partner in the restaurant group for 8 years. It started as a small investment, a way to diversify my portfolio. But over time, as the business grew, I took on more responsibility, more control. I worked with the lawyers, the accountants, the managers. I stayed quiet about it because I didn't need the attention. I didn't need people to know. But now, looking at the documents spread across my desk, I realized that my silence had created a different kind of problem. No one knew who I was, not even my own family. I picked up my phone and called Leonard Shaw, my lawyer. He answered on the second ring. Rowan, good to hear from you. What's going on? I need to talk about the ownership structure at the Meridian. All right, what specifically? I want to clarify some things, publicly. There was a pause. Then Leonard's voice came back. Curious. Publicly how? There's going to be an event, a dinner. I want the staff to know beforehand that I'll be there, and I want them to understand exactly who I am. Understood. When? Soon. I'll let you know the date. Rowan, Leonard said carefully, is everything okay? Everything's fine. I'm just tired of being mistaken for someone I'm not. Leonard was quiet for a moment. I've known you for a long time. I've never heard you sound like this. Like what? Determined. Maybe I should have sounded like this years ago. Maybe, but better late than never. Let me know what you need. We talked for a few more minutes about logistics, about timing, about making sure everything was in place. When I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. A door opening, a path forward. I spent the rest of the day reviewing documents, making notes, planning. The family group chat continued to explode with messages about the valet incident. Brenda had escalated to threats of legal action. Victor was composing a formal complaint. I didn't respond to any of it. That evening, Elaine came into my office. She looked at the papers spread across my desk, the open files, the notes I'd been making. What are you working on? Just business. It looks serious. It is. She lingered in the doorway, uncertain. Are you coming to bed soon? In a bit. She left without another word. I heard her moving around the apartment, getting ready for bed, turning off lights. Eventually, everything went quiet. I sat there in my office, surrounded by proof of who I really was, and planned my next move. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange kind of limbo. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Elaine went to work. I handled my business. We had dinner together most nights, watched television, maintained the routines of married life. But underneath, I was preparing. Leonard and I met twice at his office, a sleek space downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. We reviewed the ownership documents, confirmed the legal structures, discussed the operational chain of command. "Everything's solid," Leonard said, spreading the papers across his desk. "You own 45%. Your partner owns 45%. The remaining 10% is distributed among key investors. You have full operational authority over the Meridian and 2 other properties in the group." "And the staff knows this?" "Management knows. Brent Doyle, the general manager, has always known. But the front-of-house staff, the newer people, they might not be fully aware of the ownership structure." "I want everyone to know," I said. "Not just management. Everyone." Leonard leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You're really going through with this?" "I am. Can I ask why? I mean, I understand wanting recognition, but this seems personal." "It is personal." He nodded slowly. "All right, then let's make sure we do it right." We scheduled a high-profile dinner event at the Meridian for 3 weeks out. It would be a full house, private reservations, prominent guests, the kind of night that drew attention, the kind of night where everyone wanted to be seen. "I'll coordinate with Brent," Leonard said. "Make sure the staff is properly briefed. Make sure everyone understands the chain of command." "Good. And your family, are you going to warn them?" "No." Leonard raised an eyebrow. "That's going to make things complicated." "That's the point." He smiled slightly. "I have to admit, Rowan, I'm impressed. I've been your lawyer for 15 years, and I've never seen this side of you." "What side?" "The side that doesn't take things lying down." I didn't respond. I just gathered up the documents and put them back in the folder. Over the next few days, I watched the family group chat with detached amusement. Brenda had moved on from the valet incident, but her tone toward me hadn't changed. If anything, it had gotten worse. "Rowan, can you help us move some boxes this weekend?" "Rowan, we need someone to house sit next month. You're available, right?" "Rowan, pick up some wine for the dinner party. Get the good stuff. You know what we like?" Each message was phrased as a request, but delivered as a command. Each one assumed my time was less valuable than theirs. Each one reinforced the role they had assigned me. I responded to none of them, Elaine noticed. "You're ignoring the family chat," she said one evening over dinner. "I'm busy." "Brenda's getting frustrated. She says you're not responding to anything." "I noticed." "Rowan, she's just asking for help. It's not a big deal." I set down my fork and looked at her. "When was the last time Brenda helped me with anything?" Elaine blinked. "What?" "When was the last time she offered to do something for me, or even asked if I needed anything?" I don't know, but that's just how she is. She's not good at thinking about other people." "Exactly. So you're just going to ignore her?" "I'm going to stop being available whenever she needs something." "Yes." Elaine looked uncomfortable. "She's going to take that personally." "Good." "Rowan. Elaine, I've been helping your sister for years. Running errands, doing favors, being available whenever she calls. And what do I get in return? Disrespect, dismissal, being treated like the help." "She doesn't mean it like that." "Yes, she does, and you know it." Elaine looked down at her plate. Her face flushed. We ate the rest of dinner in silence. 2 days later, Brenda posted about the upcoming event at the Meridian. "Victor and I are going to an exclusive dinner at the Meridian in a few weeks. One of the owners is hosting. So excited. We know people." Victor added, "Can't wait. Best restaurant in the city. VIP treatment all the way." I stared at the messages on my phone, sitting in my car in a parking garage. The irony was exquisite. They were bragging about attending an event at a restaurant I co-owned. They thought they were special guests. They thought they had connections. They had no idea. Elaine texted me privately. "Are you going to the dinner?" I replied, "Yes." "Do you want to ride together?" "No, I'll meet you there." "Why?" "I have some things to take care of first." She didn't respond after that. The week before the event, I met with Brent Doyle at the restaurant. It was late afternoon, between lunch and dinner service, and the dining hall was empty and quiet. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Brent was in his early 50s, a professional manager with sharp instincts and a calm demeanor. He had been with the restaurant group for 6 years, and he understood the business inside and out. More importantly, he had always treated me with respect. "Everything's set for Friday," he said, walking me through the layout. Full house, 60 reservations, staff fully briefed on protocols. And they know I'll be there? They know I've made sure everyone understands who you are and what your role is in this organization. Good. Brent looked at me carefully. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Is this about more than just clarifying ownership? I met his eyes. Yes, he nodded. I thought so. I've worked with you long enough to know you don't do things without reason. Something happened. Something that crossed a line. Family. Family. Brent was quiet for a moment, then said, I won't ask for details, but I want you to know that whatever you need from me that night, you'll have it. I appreciate that. This is your restaurant, Rowan. Don't let anyone make you forget that. I left the meeting feeling more certain than I had in weeks. Everything was in place. All the pieces were arranged. Now I just had to wait. The family group chat grew more active as the event approached. Brenda posted constantly about what she was going to wear, what wine she hoped they would serve, who might be there. Victor chimed in with his usual bluster about connections and influence. Elaine tried to engage me in conversation about it. Are you excited for Friday? Sure. That's it? Just sure? What do you want me to say, Elaine? I don't know. Maybe show some enthusiasm. This is supposed to be a nice event. It will be. She studied my face, searching for something. You're being strange lately. Distant. I'm fine. No, you're not. Ever since that dinner a few weeks ago, you've been different. Colder. Maybe I'm just tired of pretending. Pretending what? That everything's fine. That I'm okay with how your family treats me. Elaine's face went pale. We've talked about this. No, you've talked about it. You've made excuses. You've asked me to be patient, but nothing has changed. What do you want me to do, Rowan? Choose between you and my family? I want you to stand up for me, just once. She looked at me for a long moment, then walked out of the room. I heard our bedroom door close quietly. I sat there alone, knowing that Friday would change everything, one way or another. Friday evening arrived clear and cool. I dressed carefully, a dark suit, crisp white shirt, silver cufflinks that had belonged to my grandfather. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, and barely recognized the man staring back at me. For years, I had made myself small, unobtrusive, background. I had worn neutral colors, kept my voice down, avoided drawing attention. I had shrunk to fit the role they assigned me. But tonight, I looked like someone who belonged in the room, someone who mattered. Elaine was still getting ready when I grabbed my keys. She called out from the bathroom. Wait, aren't we riding together? I need to get there early. I'll see you there. Rowan, wait. But I was already out the door. I drove slowly, taking the long route, letting my mind settle into calm focus. The sun was setting, casting the city in golden light. People were out on the streets, heading to restaurants, bars, theaters. Friday night energy filled the air. I parked in the garage across from the Meridian and sat in the car for a moment, watching the restaurant through the windshield. The entrance was already busy, valet attendants moving efficiently, early guests arriving. The building itself seemed to glow in the fading light. This was mine. Partly mine, but mine nonetheless. I had invested in it, guided it, helped build it into what it was, and no one in my family had any idea. I got out of the car and walked across the street. The evening air was cool, sharp, clearing my head. As I approached the entrance, one of the valet attendants saw me and straightened immediately. Good evening, Mr. Carrig. Evening. The hostess inside greeted me the same way. Mr. Carrig, welcome. Everything's ready for tonight. Thank you. I walked through the entrance into the main dining hall. It was beautiful, as always. The lighting was warm and soft, the tables set with precision, fresh flowers at every setting. Soft music played in the background, just loud enough to create atmosphere without overwhelming conversation. The room was already starting to fill. Well-dressed guests arrived in clusters, greeting each other loudly, performing their importance. I recognized several faces: business owners, city officials, society people who measured their worth in invitations and access. I found my table near the center of the room, not hidden, not off to the side, right where everyone could see. I sat down and waited. More guests arrived. The energy in the room built steadily, voices growing louder, laughter becoming more frequent. Phones came out, photos were taken, social media updates posted. Everyone wanted to document that they were here, that they were part of this. Then Brenda and Victor walked in. Brenda was wearing a deep blue dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her jewelry caught the light as she moved, announcing her presence. Victor followed in an expensive suit, chest puffed out, already scanning the room to see who else was there. They made their entrance like royalty, pausing at the door to let people see them, moving through the room with exaggerated confidence. Several people greeted them, and they responded with loud enthusiasm, making sure their voices carried. I watched them work the room, and felt nothing but a calm, quiet certainty about what was coming. Elaine arrived a few minutes later, quieter, less theatrical. She saw me sitting alone and walked over, her expression uncertain. "You're already here. I told you I was coming early." She sat down across from me, smoothing her dress. "This place is packed. Brenda's thrilled. She keeps saying she can't believe we got invited to something this exclusive." "I'm sure she is thrilled." Elaine looked at me closely. "You seem calm. Too calm." "Do I?" "Yes. It's making me nervous." "There's nothing to be nervous about." But there was something in my voice that made her pause. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. Instead, she just looked around the room, fidgeting with her napkin. Brenda and Victor eventually made their way to our table. Brenda was glowing with excitement, her phone already out, taking photos of everything. "This place is incredible," she said, sitting down next to Elaine. "I knew it would be amazing, but this exceeds expectations." Victor nodded, settling into his chair like a king on a throne. "It pays to have connections. Not everyone gets invited to events like this." "True," I said quietly. Brenda glanced at me, surprised that I had spoken. Well, Rowan has opinions tonight." "Sometimes." Victor laughed. "Easy there, buddy. Don't hurt yourself." The table fell into the usual pattern. Brenda and Victor dominated the conversation, talking about their week, their plans, their opinions on the restaurant, the guests, the event. Elaine played along, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. I sat quietly, watching the room fill to capacity. The servers began bringing out the first course. The room settled into a comfortable hum of conversation and clinking silverware. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Then Brent Doyle stepped into the center of the room. The conversations didn't stop immediately. People kept talking, kept eating. But Brent raised his hand slightly, and one of the servers tapped a glass with a fork. The sound cut through the noise, clear and sharp. Gradually, the room fell quiet. Phones lowered. People turned to look. Brent stood there, calm and composed, waiting until he had complete attention. Then he spoke. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight at the Meridian." Brent's voice carried clearly across the silent room. Every eye was on him. Even the servers had stopped moving, standing at attention along the walls. "Before we continue with the evening," Brent said, "I wanted to take a moment to address something that's come to my attention. There seems to be some confusion about the ownership and management structure of this establishment." A few people glanced at each other, curious. Brenda leaned over to Victor and whispered something. He shrugged. "Some of you," Brent continued, "may believe you're here tonight because of personal connections, because you know the right people, because you have access to exclusive circles." He paused, letting the words settle. "And while we certainly appreciate all of our guests, I want to clarify exactly how this restaurant operates and who makes the decisions about events like this one." The room was absolutely silent now. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic outside. Brent gestured toward me. "This is Rowan Carrig. Some of you may recognize him as a regular guest. Others may have seen him here accompanying his family." Every head in the room turned toward me. I didn't move. I just sat there, hands folded on the table, meeting their gazes calmly. "What many of you don't know," Brent said, "is that Mr. Carrig is a co-owner of the Meridian. He holds a 45% stake in this restaurant and the broader hospitality group we operate under. He has been a partner for 8 years, and his investment and strategic guidance have been essential to our success." The silence deepened. I could feel Brenda's stare like a physical weight. "Mr. Carrig has chosen to maintain a low profile," Brent continued. "He doesn't seek attention or recognition. He prefers to let the quality of the establishment speak for itself. But I believe it's important for everyone here to understand who he is and what his role is in this organization." Brenda's face had gone completely white. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Now," Brent said, his tone still perfectly professional, "I understand there was an incident a few weeks ago involving a misunderstanding about Mr. Carrig's position. A guest at this restaurant handed him her car keys and asked him to park her vehicle, apparently believing he was a valet attendant." A few gasps rippled through the room. People started putting pieces together, glancing between Brenda and me. "Mr. Carrig," Brent said, being the gracious person he is, accepted the keys without correction. He could have explained who he was, he could have refused, but instead, he chose to handle the situation quietly. Brent's expression remained neutral, but there was a subtle edge to his voice now. However, I think it's important for everyone to understand what actually happened that night. When Mr. Carrig accepted those keys, he brought them to our valet station and gave specific instructions. Instructions that we followed precisely. Victor had stopped moving entirely. He sat frozen, his face draining of color. The vehicle in question, Brent continued, was moved off-site to a public parking lot approximately 15 blocks from here. This was done at Mr. Carrigg's explicit request. The owner of the vehicle was later informed of its location and had to arrange for its retrieval. Whispers started spreading through the room. People were looking at Brenda now, and not with sympathy. "I want to be absolutely clear," Brent said, raising his voice slightly to cut through the murmurs. "This was not a failure of service. This was not a mistake. This was a deliberate instruction from one of the owners of this establishment, and we carried it out exactly as requested." Brenda tried to speak. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out except a small, choked sound. Brent turned to address the whole room. "Mr. Carrig has always been professional, respectful, and generous with this establishment and everyone who works here. He treats our staff with dignity, he values their contributions, and he expects the same level of respect in return." He looked directly at Brenda now. When someone treats him as if he's less than what he is, when someone assumes they can assign him roles or dismiss his worth, they're not just disrespecting him, they're disrespecting this entire organization. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. "So I wanted to take this opportunity," Brent said, "to make sure everyone here tonight understands exactly who Rowan Carrig is. He is a co-owner of the Meridian. He is a respected businessman and investor, and he is the reason many of you were invited to this event in the first place." Brent smiled slightly. "If you're here tonight, if you're enjoying this meal, if you're experiencing this atmosphere, it's because Mr. Carrig approved it. Every reservation, every guest, every detail." He let that sink in. "Now," Brent said, his tone shifting back to warmth, "I hope everyone can enjoy the rest of the evening with a clearer understanding of how this establishment operates. Thank you for your attention." He stepped back, and the room remained frozen in silence. Then slowly, someone started clapping. Someone else joined. Within seconds, applause filled the room, building into something substantial and genuine. People were nodding, some of them looking at me with newfound respect. I sat still, acknowledging the applause with a small nod. Brenda looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. Her face was red, her hands shaking. She couldn't look at anyone, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but sit there as the reality crashed over her. Victor wasn't much better. His usual bluster had evaporated completely. He stared down at his plate like it might offer him an escape route. Elaine sat beside me, her hand covering her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. The applause faded. Conversations resumed, but they were different now, quieter, more careful. I could see people glancing at our table, whispering to each other. I pushed my chair back and stood up. Brenda's eyes snapped to me, terrified about what I might say. I didn't say anything to her. I just looked at Brent and nodded once. A simple acknowledgement between professionals. Then I looked at Elaine. "I'll be outside." I walked through the dining room toward the exit. People moved out of my way. Several of them nodded as I passed. One man, someone I recognized from the business community, extended his hand. "Mr. Carrig, I had no idea. Impressive establishment." I shook his hand. "Thank you." I continued to the exit, through the lobby, out into the cool evening air. The valet attendants straightened when they saw me. "Mr. Carrig," Julian said, "do you need your car?" "Not yet. Just needed some air." "Of course, sir." I stood there at the entrance, looking out at the city lights, breathing in the night air. Behind me, through the windows, I could see the dining room continuing, people eating, talking, the evening proceeding, but everything had changed. I had spent years being quiet, being helpful, being whatever they needed me to be, and they had mistaken that flexibility for weakness. They had confused my silence with submission, but silence was never weakness. It was choice. And tonight, I had chosen differently. Inside, I knew Brenda was sitting in her chair, unable to eat, unable to think, replaying every interaction we'd ever had, every dismissive comment, every assigned task, every moment she had treated me like I was less than her. And now she knew, everyone knew, I was not less than anyone. I was exactly who I had always been. They just hadn't been paying attention. I stood outside for several minutes, letting the evening wash over me. Cars passed on the street, their headlights cutting through the darkness. The city hummed with its usual Friday night energy, indifferent to the small earthquake that had just occurred inside. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out and saw messages flooding the family group chat. I didn't need to read them to know what they said, panic, confusion, attempts at damage control. I put the phone back in my pocket without opening the chat. The door behind me opened. I turned, expecting Elaine, but it was Leonard Shaw. My lawyer must have been inside the whole time, though I hadn't seen him. "That was something," he said, walking up beside me. "You were there?" "Wouldn't have missed it. I wanted to see how Brent handled it." He smiled. "He handled it perfectly." "He did." Leonard looked at me carefully. "How do you feel? Calm? Just calm?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "You know there's going to be fallout from this." "I know. Family relationships, social circles, all of it. People are going to take sides." "Let them." Leonard was quiet for a moment. "I've been your lawyer for a long time, Rowan. I've seen you navigate some complicated situations, but I've never seen you do anything like this." Things needed to change. They certainly changed tonight. He clapped me on the shoulder. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is stand up for yourself, especially to people who are supposed to care about you." "Thank you. Call me if you need anything, legal or otherwise." He went back inside. I stayed where I was, watching the street, breathing the cool air. A few minutes later, the door opened again. This time, it was Elaine. She walked up beside me, but didn't say anything at first. We stood there together in silence, the space between us feeling vast. "You knew," she said finally. "You knew this whole time what was going to happen tonight." "Yes." "And you didn't tell me?" "No." "Why?" I turned to look at her. "Because you would have tried to stop me." Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Of course I would have tried to stop you. That was humiliating for Brenda. It was the truth. It was cruel. Was it cruel when she handed me her car keys in front of everyone? Was it cruel when she treated me like a servant? When she and Victor laughed at me?" Elaine flinched. "That was different? How?" "She didn't mean it the way you're making it sound." "Elaine, she meant exactly what I'm making it sound like. And you know it. You've always known it. She's my sister. And I'm your husband. But you've never defended me. Not once. Not in all the years we've been together." Elaine wrapped her arms around herself. "What did you want me to do, Rowan? Start a war with my own family? I wanted you to stand beside me. Just once I wanted you to tell her she was wrong, that treating me like that wasn't okay. I tried to keep the peace. You tried to stay comfortable. There's a difference." She looked at me with something like heartbreak in her eyes. "I can't believe you did this. I can't believe it took me this long." We stood there, the distance between us growing with every word. "Brenda's devastated," Elaine said. "She's in the bathroom. She can't even face people." "Good. How can you say that?" "Because maybe for once in her life she'll understand what it feels like to be on the receiving end. Maybe she'll think twice before treating someone like they're beneath her." "You're being vindictive." "I'm being honest." Elaine shook her head. "I don't even recognize you right now." "That's because you've never really looked at me. None of you have. You just saw what you wanted to see. A quiet man, a helpful presence, someone who would do what he was told and never push back." "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, tears running down her face, looking at me like I was a stranger. "I need to go back inside," she said finally. "Brenda needs me." "Of course she does." Elaine turned to leave, then stopped. "Are you coming back in?" "No, I'm going home." "What am I supposed to tell people?" "Tell them the truth, Elaine. Tell them your husband owns the restaurant. Tell them he's not who they thought he was. Tell them whatever you want." She looked at me one more time, searching my face for something. Then she walked back inside without another word. I stood there alone again, feeling the weight of the evening settle over me. Part of me expected to feel guilty, to feel regret. But I didn't. I felt free. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Brent. "Thank you for tonight. You handled it perfectly." His response came quickly. "My pleasure. This place has always been yours. Now everyone knows it." I put the phone away and walked to the valet stand. Julian brought my car around immediately, and I tipped him generously. "Have a good evening, Mr. Carrig." "You too." I drove home through the quiet streets, the city lights blurring past the windows. When I got to the apartment, it was dark and empty. I didn't turn on the lights. I just walked to the living room window and looked out at the view. Somewhere across the city, Brenda was probably still hiding in that bathroom, unable to face the crowd. Victor was probably trying to figure out how to spin the story, how to salvage his image. Elaine was probably sitting at the table alone, caught between her family and her husband, unable to choose. And I was here, finally at peace with who I was. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from my business partner, the other major owner of the restaurant group. Heard about tonight? About time people knew who you were. Well done. I smiled and set the phone down. Tomorrow would bring more consequences. More anger. More demands for explanations. But tonight I had done what needed to be done. I had stopped being invisible. I woke up Saturday morning to an empty apartment and 147 unread messages. I made coffee first, taking my time with the ritual, grinding the beans, measuring the water, waiting for it to brew. The apartment was quiet, peaceful in the morning light. Then I sat at the kitchen table and started scrolling through my phone. The family group chat was a disaster. Brenda had posted a long message around midnight, full of anger and accusations. She called me manipulative, vindictive, cruel. She said I had planned the whole thing to embarrass her, that I was sick for letting her humiliate herself. Victor had posted his own message, trying to sound reasonable but coming across as defensive. He said they had no idea I owned the restaurant, that anyone could have made the same mistake, that my response was disproportionate. Elaine's mother had chimed in, asking what was happening, saying she was hearing stories from multiple people who had been at the dinner. Various cousins, aunts, uncles had all added their opinions. Some defended Brenda. Others seemed confused. A few asked questions that no one was answering, and Elaine herself had posted nothing. I scrolled through it all without responding. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been said. But there were other messages too. Private texts from people who had been at the dinner, business contacts, acquaintances, even a few people I barely knew. Most of them were congratulatory. That took guts. I always wondered who you were. Respect. A few were curious. I had no idea you owned the Meridian. How long have you been involved? And a handful were from people trying to distance themselves from Brenda and Victor. We never agreed with how they treated you. We always thought they were too loud. I responded to none of them. Around noon, Elaine came home. She looked exhausted, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red. Where were you? I asked. Brenda's house. All night? Yes. She dropped her purse on the counter and leaned against the wall. She's a mess, Rowan. She hasn't stopped crying. Victor's trying to do damage control, calling people, making excuses. I see. That's all you have to say? I see? What do you want me to say, Elaine? I want you to show some remorse. You humiliated my sister in front of 60 people. I corrected a misunderstanding. You planned this. You set her up. I set down my coffee cup. I didn't set her up. She set herself up. Every time she treated me like I was beneath her. Every time she handed me tasks like I was her assistant. Every time she laughed at me. She didn't know? She didn't care to know. There's a difference. Elaine's face crumpled. How long have you been this angry? I'm not angry. Then what are you? Done. I'm done being treated like that. She stared at me, and I could see her trying to understand, trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the man she thought she knew. What happens now? She asked quietly. That's up to you. What do you mean? I mean you need to decide where you stand, with me or with them. That's not fair. They're my family. And I'm your husband, but you've never treated me like I mattered as much as they do. Elaine's eyes filled with tears. I love you, Rowan. I know you do, but love isn't enough if you won't stand up for me. I don't know how to do both. Then maybe you need to figure it out. She stood there for a long moment, tears running down her face. Then she turned and walked to our bedroom, closing the door quietly behind her. I sat there alone in the kitchen, listening to the silence. The rest of the weekend passed in that same quiet tension. Elaine stayed in the bedroom most of the time. I worked in my office, reviewed documents, returned business emails. We barely spoke. On Sunday evening, my phone rang. It was Leonard. How are you holding up? Fine. I've been hearing things. The story's spreading pretty fast. I figured it would. Some people are taking Brenda's side, saying you were cruel. Others are saying she had it coming. It's dividing opinion pretty cleanly. Let them divide. Leonard was quiet for a moment. You're really okay with all this? More than okay. Even if it costs you your marriage? I glanced toward the closed bedroom door. Even then. Wow, Rowan. I have to say, I really respect that. We spoke for a few more minutes about business, upcoming meetings, and the restaurant. When we ended the call, that same calm certainty settled over me again. This was who I was now, someone who didn't apologize for standing up for himself, someone who didn't shrink to make others comfortable, and if that meant losing people, then I would lose them. Monday morning, Elaine emerged from the bedroom dressed for work. She moved around the kitchen quietly, making coffee, avoiding eye contact. "Are we going to talk about this?" I asked. "I don't know what to say." "You could start by telling me how you feel." She turned to look at me. "I feel torn, Rowan. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between the two most important parts of my life." "No one's forcing you." "Yes, you are. You're making me choose." "I'm asking you to stand up for me. That's not the same as choosing." "It feels the same." She grabbed her things and headed for the door. "I need time to think." "Take all the time you need." She left without another word. I went to my office and opened my laptop. There were emails waiting from Brent, updates about the restaurant, questions about upcoming events. Business continued, steady and reliable. I spent the day working, handling calls, reviewing reports. It was easier to focus on work than to think about Elaine, about the family, about everything that was unraveling. That evening, alone in the apartment, I made dinner for myself. Pasta, simple and quick. I ate at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the city lights. My phone buzzed, a text from Brenda. "We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it without responding. She texted again an hour later. "Ignoring me won't change what you did." I deleted that too. The texts kept coming over the next few days. Brenda, Victor, Elaine's mother, various family members. All of them wanting to talk, to explain, to make me understand their perspective. I responded to none of them. Instead, I focused on work, on the restaurant, on building the things I had been quietly building for years. And slowly, I began to realize something. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their understanding. I didn't need them to validate who I was. I already knew. 2 weeks after the dinner, Elaine asked if we could talk. We sat in the living room, facing each other from opposite ends of the couch. The apartment felt too quiet, too formal, like we were strangers meeting for the first time. "I've been thinking," Elaine said carefully, "about everything, about us, about what happened." I waited. I talked to a therapist. She helped me see some things more clearly. "What things?" "That I've been avoiding conflict for so long that I let it poison everything. That I chose the easy path instead of the right path. That I let my sister disrespect you because confronting her was too hard." I didn't say anything. I just listened. "I'm sorry, Rowan. I'm sorry I never stood up for you. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter as much as they did." "Thank you. But I'm also angry with you." "I know. You didn't have to do it that way. You could have talked to me first. We could have figured something out together." "I tried talking to you, for years, Elaine, and nothing changed." She nodded slowly. "You're right. Nothing changed because I didn't want it to change. I wanted to keep everyone happy. But you can't keep everyone happy. Someone always loses. Usually me." "Usually you," she agreed quietly. We sat in silence for a while. Then Elaine said, "Brenda wants to apologize." "I don't want her apology." "Rowan, I don't want anything from her, Elaine. Not apologies, not explanations, nothing. She's my sister. I know, and you can have whatever relationship with her you want, but I'm done. Done with her or done with me?" I looked at her directly. "That depends on you. On whether I choose you over her? On whether you can stand beside me without putting them first." Elaine's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can do that." "Then you have your answer." She broke down then, really crying, her whole body shaking. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to hold her, to tell her it would be okay. But I didn't, because it wouldn't be okay, not unless something fundamental changed. After a while, Elaine wiped her eyes and stood up. "I'm going to stay with my mother for a while. I need space to figure things out." "All right. Is that all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Something. Anything. You're so calm about all of this." "I'm calm because I've already made my decision, Elaine. I know who I am and what I'm worth. The question is whether you do." She looked at me for a long moment, then went to pack a bag. I sat there on the couch, listening to her move around the bedroom, opening drawers, zipping luggage. When she came back out, she paused at the door. "I do love you, Rowan." "I know. I just don't know if love is enough anymore." "Neither do I." She left, and the apartment fell into that deep, empty silence. I sat there for a long time, not moving, not thinking, just existing in the quiet. Then I got up, went to my office, and got back to work. The next few days passed in a strange kind of peace. The apartment was empty, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt clear, focused, like I had finally stopped carrying a weight I didn't know I was holding. Brent called midweek. How are you doing? Fine. Really fine? Or just saying that? Really fine. Good, because I wanted to run something by you. We've been getting a lot of attention since the dinner. Good attention. People want to know more about the restaurant, about the ownership, about you. And I think we should lean into it. Do some interviews, maybe a feature in the business section. Let people see who you really are. I thought about it. Let me consider it. Take your time. But Rowan? Yes? For what it's worth, everyone here respects the hell out of you. What you did took courage, and it reminded all of us why we're proud to work here. Thank you, Brent. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, looking at the documents spread out in front of me. Partnership agreements, financial reports, plans for expansion. This was real. This was solid. This was something I had built with my own hands, my own mind, my own money, and no one could take it away from me. My phone buzzed. A text from Elaine. Can we meet for coffee? I stared at the message, then typed back, when? Tomorrow morning, that cafe you like? All right. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe early. The same place I had come to after that first dinner when I had started to understand what needed to change. I ordered coffee and sat by the window, watching people pass on the sidewalk. The same barista who had called me sir was working again. He smiled when he brought my coffee. Good to see you again. You too. Elaine arrived a few minutes later. She looked better than she had in weeks. Rested, clear-eyed. She sat down across from me and ordered tea. Thank you for meeting me, she said. Of course. I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of therapy, a lot of hard conversations with myself. I waited. I realize now that I've been unfair to you. Not just about Brenda, but about everything. I've let you be the quiet one, the accommodating one, the one who bends so I don't have to deal with conflict. Yes. And I hate that I did that to you. I hate that I made you feel small. I let myself feel small. That's on me. Maybe, but I didn't help. I should have seen it. Should have stopped it. She looked down at her tea. Brenda and I had a big fight. I told her that what she did to you was wrong, that she treated you terribly, that I should have stood up for you years ago. How did she take it? Not well. She said I was choosing you over family, that I was betraying her. And what did you say? Elaine met my eyes. I told her that you are my family, and that she needs to respect that. Something shifted in my chest, a small crack in the armor I'd been wearing. What does that mean for us? I asked. I don't know yet. I'm still figuring it out, but I know I can't go back to how things were. I can't keep putting their feelings above yours. That's a start. Is it enough? I thought about it. I don't know, but it's more than you've ever given me before. We sat there for a while, drinking our coffee and tea, watching the world move past the windows. I'm not moving back in yet, Elaine said finally. I need more time, but I want to try. I want to see if we can rebuild this. On different terms. On better terms, I nodded. All right. All right? Yes. But Elaine, I need you to understand something. I'm not going back to being quiet. I'm not going to shrink myself to make other people comfortable. If we do this, you need to be okay with who I actually am. I'm starting to be. Starting isn't enough. I know, but it's all I have right now. We finished our drinks and parted ways outside the cafe. She hugged me briefly, and I let her, feeling the warmth and the distance at the same time. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, not certainty, not confidence, just hope. And maybe that was enough for now.